Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists with your hosts, Adriana Amay and
Jackie Sanders. We're two emerging artists sharing forth the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you're not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we launch a new episode every Tuesday.
So on today's episode, we're really excited to welcome as our guest artist, Clarence Heyward. So Clarence originally from Brooklyn, New York. He is a painter and collage artist whose work aims to explore an inside dialogue around culture, identity, and circumstances while drawing upon his experiences as a Black man living in the United States, and in this case, in the South. So there we go. Heyward relocated to North Carolina to study art education at the North Carolina Central University, and his work has been exhibited nationally, including at the 21C Museum Hotel of Durham, the Harvey B. Gantt Center in Charlotte, the Nasher Museum of Art at the Duke University, and then we'll talk about another exciting upcoming exhibition at another museum. But before we do that, Clarence, now that we got the formal introduction out of the way, could you tell us a little bit about your background, style of work, how you see yourself as a professional, just the small 411 that you would add to what we just described?
Okay. It's funny that you said how I see myself as a professional. I don't think about it in those terms, right? I get up every day and I get to paint, and I guess it's considered a job, but to me, it's just being able to do what I do. Background, of course, I'm from Brooklyn, right? Born and raised. Came down here to North Carolina for college. Had jobs. I had a job that I actually kind of liked for a while. Well, rewind that. I had a job. So senior year of college, I was student teaching. And they told us the starting salary was going to be $27,252. So I never became a teacher. Right out of college, I actually became a truck driver at first. And I did that for a while because the money was good, right?
Yeah.
I got tired of truck driving, and I got into like the logistical aspect of the company, and I became a route manager. So I designed routes and dealt directly with customers and stuff like that. I did that for like 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And then I moved to Clayton. When I moved to Clayton, I had an hour drive to the office, and I didn't listen to the radio a lot. So I was in the car for long rides, and I was like, man, what am I doing with my life? This can't be it. Like, I'm making good money, but I hate it here. Like, I kind of like being a truck driver better. But I just dealt with it for a while, and then I talked to my wife. She was kind of stressed out about what I was doing because I was never home. Because when I moved into the management, I was like 12 hours a day minimum, right?
Wow.
And we had 2 kids at the time, 2 little kids. So she was just like, you're not home. We have a newborn basically, and a toddler. Like, what are you doing? So I was like, well, I mean, what else can I do? I just kind of threw it out there, and she was just like, be an artist. Because we went to school together, like we went to high school together at School of the Arts in New York, and then we went to college together. So she knew, I had artistic ability, but I wasn't using it like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a conversation. I kind of took it seriously, so I went out, bought art supplies, and converted like a studio in my house a room in my house into a studio. And every day when I would come home from work, I would just paint and draw and paint and draw. I took like a class at Durham Tech, like a Drawing 1 class, just to like do it again. And after like the 3rd week, they were like, "What are you doing here?" I'm just like,
That was a basic class.
"Yeah." They're like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Man, I'm trying to figure it out." Like, I know I don't need like, I don't know any artists. Like, I don't know how else to refresh my skills. So I took a Drawing 1 class again. So after that, I just started building a body of work. And then a year to the date, when me and my wife had that conversation, she actually gave me my resignation letter. She was like, it's been a year. We talked about it. It's time or whatever. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I took the letter, and happy wife, happy life. So I took the letter to work.
Man, what an
And
amazing wife. Talk about a push in the right direction.
yeah, and funny enough, we had a managers meeting, and at the meeting, I just, you get frustrated. I'm sitting there listening to this crap, and I'm like, man, I hate it here. So I was like, you know what? I had the Joker in my pocket. I just whipped it out like,
Oh,
The trump card. Just
yeah. And they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Because I never complained at work, right? I just went and sucked it up or whatever.
hmm
So, I mean, I put in my 2 weeks, and on my last day, I got in the car and cried. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Like, and then I had to get to work
man. So
because I
what
didn't have
year
a, I
was
didn't have
that?
So we had the conversation in 2018. I quit January 2019, like 2 days before my birthday.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. So now, I mean, talk about an origin story with just going all in with your art career. For people who haven't seen your work, how would you describe your work to them? Of course, we're on YouTube, so they can see pieces in the background, but if they've never seen your
Mhm.
work before, how would you describe it?
Um, I guess it's almost like a visual depiction of my life, basically, because I do a lot of self-portrait work. It's a lot of my family or a lot of work based on current events. It took me a long time to kind of find my voice, but I just started looking at my life and what I do, and like on a day-to-day basis, and I just started making art about it.
That's awesome. So
So
did you always
there's a lot
start
of
with
me.
portraiture?
Uh, yes, and that's basically like from art school, right? We do a lot of still lives and portraiture work, and it just stuck. Like, I mean, I'm not really that creative, like to think abstractly or to like make stuff up. So I've always kind of just been a guy who painted what I saw. So
Yeah. So would you say somewhat realistic depictions of people, adults and children, in different cultural contexts, sort of?
yeah, I don't know if I would say realistic. I mean, they look like people, right? But it's not really like photorealistic or anything. Um, yeah, and I'm actually even getting away from that a little bit in my latest body of work, but yeah, it's kind of hard to describe. I guess it's just my style, right? I don't really look at a lot of other people's work and try to copy. I just make work, and how it comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just
But, yeah,
expressing your voice the best way you can and your message and kind of like the
yeah,
commentary that you want to incite with the viewer, which obviously
exactly.
is, I mean, it's as authentic as it gets, to express
Mhm,
it that way, which actually I'll kind of share a fun tidbit too of how we all met
Yeah.
mhm,
for a second before we
yeah.
dive into the rest of the conversation. Um, so really funny. I think it's really funny because it was Art of the Carolina circa 2019. I'm kidding, it was
Mhm,
2019. So you were fresh off of, or you had left your job, your corporate
mhm,
type job earlier that year. I hadn't quit yet. And I know we had like this massive line and everything else. And you were looking at these big brushes and you're like, I don't know if I should get them or not. And I was like, man, they're $7. They're usually like $40. So why wouldn't you get it? And it was funny. And your kids were like, oh, yeah, look at this one. So that was fun. And your wife was there, like, yeah, get it. It's cheap. So that was really cool. And then, of course, in line, you were like making jokes about, like, dang, you must be like planning to make a lot of work. Cause there was that cart I had next to me that was taller than me, full of canvases. And I was like, yeah, if I don't do it, my husband's going to divorce me. Like, it was just so much fun. But then you're one of those folks, which, as we talk more about your background and whatnot, you're very active in like different events and just in our area in general. So it's like, even a month later, you were at the Voiland Art Walk, and I'm like, wait, you look familiar, but I don't remember from when. And your wife just started laughing. She's like, yeah, that Jerry's thing. And it's like, oh yeah, Art of the Carolina. And then you end up being a resident artist at Art Space, which is where Jackie and I both are at. Oh, I think we met at a
mhm,
VA meeting too
I was
for a
gonna
crit
say,
mhm,
I
group.
remember meeting you at the VAE Crit group that spring. So we had met in the
mhm.
fall, Adriana and I, and then she told me about meeting you at Art of the
And then a few
Carolinas.
months later, she got to meet you. Yeah, it's like, man, you're
Small
really
world.
active, which is
Yeah.
really cool with, other artists in the area. So it's actually been really cool to kind of see as well, like your growth and kind of like how you're willing to help other artists too and interact. So anyways, it's been a lot of fun to kind of see,
Mhm.
you know, the progression over time since 2019, man. This is insane.
Yeah,
I'm like, you've
yeah.
been busy, man.
It's a lot, I mean, it's a lot of work, but I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. So gotta do
Yeah.
it.
I love it. And I think that's like Adriana was saying, like the fact that you are so intentional with networking and going to events and kind of getting a lay of the land with art organizations or different institutions. I'm curious how that started, especially hearing like your origin story of how you started making artwork again, kind of went all in with turning a room in your house into a full-on studio. What were then those beginning steps that you took when getting connected within Raleigh to attending events or local galleries? What did those beginning steps look like for you, and how have those relationships evolved as your career has grown?
Okay. Beginning steps. For one, I got social media. So prior to becoming an artist, I wasn't really on social media. So I got on social media and I just started following everything like that was art related in North Carolina, especially Raleigh. So that's how I found BAE. That's how like I didn't know. The only place I knew of in Raleigh was Art Space in the North Carolina Museum of Art before I became an artist. Um, so I did that. I started going to everybody's shows. Like I didn't tell anybody I was an artist, but I just went to everybody's shows. Any kind of art
Awesome.
event, I just went. And then I
We
just started
always
meeting
talk about
people.
that on the podcast about like going undercover to art events. You almost feel like you're like, no one here knows that I'm making art, and you like choose if you disclose that or not to like scope out the event, see what kind of attendance it has. That's always so
Yeah,
much
and,
fun.
and now I can't do that. Right, it's super hard for me to go somewhere in Raleigh and people not
The
know who I am.
paparazzi are right behind you.
Yeah, no, it's not that not that bad. It's just, I mean, I've been everywhere, so now everybody knows me. Um, but yeah, I just started making relationships like that. You know, just supporting other artists, seeing exactly what they were doing, how they were doing it, who they knew. I started finding out, you know, like who called the shots, where, who ran what organization, who the curators were and directors were, and then you just start building relationships. Sending out emails with images of your work and not even asking for anything. Just say, hey, you know, hey, I'm Clarence. Here, I'm an artist. Here's the work I do, and leaving it at that, right? So, I mean, hopefully the work is memorable enough to where if they're curating a show, they think about you, or if they know someone curating a show, they think about you. Or, I mean, I don't know, if they need artwork in the office, right? But oh, I remember that guy sent me an email with some images. Let me email him back. And to be honest, I mean, I still get emails now from people I emailed 2 years ago, right? Like, hey, what are you doing now? I'm like, well, a lot has changed. I can't show at the coffee shop anymore, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, at first I was willing to do, you know, any and everything so people could see my work. But that's
Yeah,
how
so
I
you
started.
wouldn't have any call to action on those emails at all. I think that's a really fascinating point with like doing those cold emails in terms of would you ask to like, are there any
Mhm.
exhibiting opportunities, or just be like, hey, here's my work. I hope you enjoy it, and leave it
Yeah,
at
that's
that.
it. I was just, yeah, I wasn't asking for anything. If I had an exhibition, sometimes I'll say, hey, you know, I have an exhibition at this place running, and like, you know, I'd love for you to go see it. But that was it. I never asked anybody for anything.
Not a coffee date to talk about opportunity, just hey, here's this in your inbox. Enjoy. And then go
Yep.
about your
Nope.
life.
No. I mean, I think it's with. It's kind of. I'm not the person to like. I don't know. I've never really like asked for stuff. So even now, like when I get emails, and people want to have coffee. I almost don't know how to respond. I'm like, sure, like okay,
No,
but
yeah, I agree because I feel like even especially as like emerging artists, or we'll have artists that come to art space and asking for feedback on their work, which is super flattering to get that. But yeah, it is also being aware of the other person's time to where they have very important things to do. If they're a curator of a museum, they might not just have an hour and a half block to have coffee with someone. So I think that's honestly really smart and a good strategic way of just, hey, here's my work, not asking for anything, but if you're interested, here it is, do with it what you want. Now the ball is kind of in their court. And at least you know that then they're somewhat aware of you. Whether they ignore the email and go on or it sticks in their mind, it is kind of planting that seed for long-term networking connections.
Yeah, it's really just planting the seed, because what I found out is like, okay, I might not get a response, but they'll see my work somewhere else, and then they'll remember, like, oh, that's the guy that sent me the email. And then I'll get like, hey, I saw your work here. Such, good to see you doing great things. And I'm like, I wanted to do great things with you, but you never, but,
Right. That's true, especially as you're growing and now getting amazing opportunities based on that networking. It's kind of like, yeah, remember that cold email that you ignored 2 years ago? Well, look at me now.
Now you gotta wait. VIP list, thanks.
well, no, it's not that. But now it's kind of like, okay, what can we do together? Like I would still love to show at your place, or like, I don't know. It's more. I mean, the playing field becomes a little more like leveled, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think now you kind of both have leverage too, especially depending
Yeah.
on who the place was. So in addition
Yes.
to doing those cold email reach outs and attending events, was there anything specific? I know even you were saying with networking with other artists, were there any specific networking groups or organizations that you relied on when you first started or are still using a lot today that you found have been really helpful?
Hmm. Okay. How can I put it? In a way, I'm cheap too, right? I'll start by saying that. So like, I never joined the organizations because I don't want to pay. So like, right? Like I never had a VAE membership, but I'll go to their events. Or I never had like Durham Arts Guild, or I never had a membership, but like if they have an open call, I might do it, or I'll go to the shows. So I'll know the members, and they might think I'm a member. I don't want to pay the entry fee.
You're at
Right.
all the events so much that they're like, oh yeah, to be sure he's a member. And you're like, nope, I just show up to everything. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And then when they have like a members only exhibition, they're like, why aren't you in it? Because I'm not a member. Like,
Whoops. But hey, if you invite me.
yeah. So like, I guess I have more relationships with like the artists, and like, I guess the organizations too, but it's more like the people who work at the organizations, right? Like, so I try to have relationships with I don't know, the front desk staff. So they open the door when I show up, right? Or like the director. So like if I need something, or if she knows who I am, it's really letting people know who you are and what you do, and get in where you fit in. When they see an opportunity that they think you would fit good well with, they'll call you.
They'll reach out.
I mean, that's how I operate.
Question with you, a two-part question. So obviously we've mentioned you making contacts and kind of establishing your network with artists, curators, all the things. So two things for you. How do you keep track of everybody? And how do you keep in constant contact with them? Or how do you keep
From
them
like a
updated?
marketing standpoint?
Marketing, but also like keeping track of people, like, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a while, I want to reach out. Or are you using some kind of database for, say, the main people you're dealing with? Or it's all in your memory? And then number two, are you using some sort of newsletter, or do you rely mostly on social media to communicate? Like when things are coming up?
So I
Sorry,
guess I'm just
twofold.
old. I guess I'm old because like I use social media. It's a tool, but I probably don't use it to the best of its capability or whatever. I probably send more just regular emails than anything. Like I'm old school with it. I mean, I probably would handwrite a letter before I send something on Instagram, but yeah, I don't really have like a database. I mean, I have my contact list on my phone. As of recently, I haven't really been reaching out to a lot of people because I've been so busy in the studio working, and I have a couple things lined up. But like once those start, then I'll start reaching out again, right? Like
Keep
I'll
the
also,
pipeline going.
yeah. So I don't have like assistants or like, I mean, I don't do digital work, right? I have to actually make all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I get stuff lined up, and then I take time to make the work. When the work is finished, or I find a home for the work, then I start, looking for something else. But I mean, as of like the last year or two, it's been so crazy. Like I don't even have to really reach out anymore. because of all the seeds that I planted, stuff just keeps coming up like organically, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's an awesome point in terms of just making yourself known, as you were talking about. You're a very like lovable, approachable guy too. So whenever you come to a group, like everyone's excited to see you and you always give great feedback to other artists. I think that like automatically brings people's walls down and makes you such a relatable person so that then you stick in people's mind, which is really awesome when those opportunities do come up.
Plus, you also have something, I just have to mention it for those that don't know you in person. It's like you're a no fluff guy, which is awesome. So it's like you can be in crit and you'll be like, I don't know, that red spot right there. Like it's actionable, it's constructive, but you don't beat around the bush. You go straight to the point, which is very, very much appreciated. And you're not talking like, and the juxtaposition of this dot versus this line. Like you're not like in artsy fartsy language either. You're like this thing here, boom. That's it. You do you, boo, but that's what I would
Well,
change. And I don't know,
yeah,
that's like refreshing.
well, hold on. Well, I don't go around just pointing out stuff in
No,
people's
you
work, right?
don't.
When it's
Only
asked.
vast. Only a vast. I will
right,
say that.
right. But then, if you ask my opinion, I guess you want it, so I give it, right? And
Yep.
like, if you didn't ask for fluff, you just asked me what I thought, or what I think. So I'll tell you. I mean, I guess so.
Straight up.
I mean,
Hey, and
yeah,
again, that's appreciated for sure.
yeah. I mean, if I ask you, I want you to tell me. If I'm painting a portrait and the eyes are crooked, please tell me. Like, I don't want to put the work out, and you know.
Yeah, and especially as artists, sometimes we're looking at our own work so much that you're like, do you recognize this huge glaring thing that like everyone else in this room sees, but we think it's obvious, but as the artist, we can get so just like masked by our own pieces because we're looking at them for hours and hours at a time.
Exactly.
That's true. But so speaking of obviously the work that we're putting out there, that exhibition you have coming up at CAM.
Mm-hmm.
This is really, really exciting. First thing, how did that opportunity come about? Is it something that you reached out saying, hey, here's my work, let's discuss, or did they reach out? Like, how did that get started?
From what I hear, this is what they told me. I was in a group exhibition. I think it was like 2019-ish, like right before 2019. So right before COVID, I was in that group exhibition, and I had a piece there, and the piece sold as soon as the show opened up. Like there was like a line of people and wanted to buy it. So I guess that got Cam's attention. And then the show only stayed open for like 5 days or something because COVID happened.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to sell it, on that first day. But after that, they sent an email and said, can they do a studio visit? And I said, of course. I said, sure. And they came to my studio and they just said, hey, what are you working on? And I showed them what I was working on. And they said, would you like to have an exhibition at CAM?
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I said, of course. And then, a couple studio visits later, a couple, conversations later, my show opens next month.
That's amazing. So for the listeners who may be in the Raleigh area, can you tell a little bit about the exhibition in terms of the concept behind it, the work that you're including, how many pieces, and all of those details when it's officially opening?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Yes, I would. That's why I was asking.
All the deets, man. Give us all the deets.
We've gone into his studio and he has all these paintings flipped backwards and he's like, those aren't for view yet. Those are the exhibition. So I am eagerly waiting to see your show too.
Yes. So I'm not a sneak peek kind of guy, right? I kind of like people to come see the work and they haven't seen it before. But as of right now, I think there are I think like 16 or 17 paintings.
Wow. And they're pretty large scale, correct?
Yes. So they range from, I have a few small works that are like, I think 17 by 17. And those got in, I mean, it's a whole story behind why those are in anyway. But the biggest piece is like 120 by 72. So it's a crazy range.
10-footer.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Right.
And so for people that haven't been to CAM, the Contemporary Art Museum in downtown Raleigh, it's this beautiful, beautiful industrial building. It used to be an old produce warehouse. And so I actually did an internship there like 6 years ago, worked with the curator, Gab Smith, who was absolutely amazing, and helped create an exhibition brochure for them. And they just have, in my opinion, some of like the best contemporary art museums, of course, or contemporary art exhibitions in our area. And I think it's awesome that you have an exhibition there too. Clearly they have good taste.
Do you know what
I
spot your
appreciate
art
it.
is going to be in by any chance? Upstairs,
Oh
downstairs?
yeah, upstairs.
Nice.
So and that's why I had smaller pieces because at first, I thought it was gonna be I assumed it was gonna be downstairs. And then of course when we did my site visit, I was like, oh no, it's upstairs. And it's
So
like,
you got the
oh,
big
okay.
space.
Yeah, so I had to start making some bigger paintings. But man, I'm trying to think what can I talk about? What can I tell about the exhibition? Um,
Without giving it all away.
I know,
Yeah.
right? Well, it's different. I'll say this: it's a lot different from the work people have seen from me. So I guess that's where a little bit of nervousness comes in at because I know people. But it seems like every time I have an exhibition, people expect one thing, and I'm like giving them something else because I mean, my work changes because I'm always changing, and it's always based on what I'm going through at the time or what I'm thinking about. So like, I might be thinking about flowers one day and I make work about flowers and the next day I'm thinking about hamburgers. I don't know, like however I'm feeling or whatever zone I'm in is what the work is going to be about. And of course, I mean, like all my work, this work is about my family. So of course they're the main characters. I'm in it, right? What would my work be without me? Um,
Is there an
yeah.
overarching theme or a message of this exhibition that you're trying to come through? Like, is it about a specific experience or moment in time that you're like, this is about, 2019, or this is about when I
Yes.
transitioned from corporate into artist, or like, is there something like that that kind of unifies the pieces in this exhibition?
Yes, there is. But I think if I tell people that, then
They're gonna have to
I
wait.
don't. Yeah, so I don't want to. I want people to go into it and kind of feel it, right? Like I don't want to tell people what to feel walking in or looking at the work. Like this exhibition has a soundscape to it, so it's kind of like it's only like a minute and a half or so, but it's I kind of had it made so people can understand like the feeling behind why I made the work. Um, hmm, it's just tough trying to talk about it and not talk about it at the same time. Uh,
No, I think that's awesome because I think we talk about that on the podcast a lot too. Like, as the artist, you have the right to disclose or keep to yourself whatever parts of your creative process, behind the scenes, or messaging that you want. And I think, especially for an exhibition as big as this, wanting people to go in with a clean slate makes a lot of sense. And if they do research and you do a future artist talk down the road, then maybe it'll be revealed. But wanting people to simply experience the work and bring their own opinions to it without having like the movie theater trailer before they see the movie. Like, you just want them to go
well,
sit
actually,
down.
there is going to be a movie theater trailer, but I think
Okay.
within like 2 minutes of walking in, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Perfect.
And then I just want people to approach each piece. Each piece leads to the next. Well, supposed to, but I had to do some rearranging because of the gallery layout. So there's like a couple pieces that got swapped. But regardless of that, you'll know exactly the storyline and what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. And like, Cam is 10 minutes away from my studio, so I'm sure I'll be in there quite often.
Yeah.
We're gonna have events, artist talks, stuff like that. So I mean, people have plenty of opportunities to ask me, exactly what I'm trying to say. But
That's
yeah.
awesome. So with that process, I'm just curious, of course, they discovered, quote unquote, or really started piquing the interest with that one exhibition in 2020. And you're saying with this series being somewhat of a new chapter or a new collection of your work, was that part of the conversation with them? Like, at what point were they brought in, or I guess told about it? Did they have to approve the work? What does that look like?
Okay. So when they came in and did the studio visit, I had already started exploring the work that I'm working on now. And when they saw it, they was like, "Oh wow, like what are you doing with it?" And I'm like, "I'm making it, right? Like I don't know where it's gonna go yet. So the way I operate is like I don't make work and say, "Oh, this is going here." Like I come to the studio every day and make work. And I make work in series. You know, I try to build a body of work so that when I'm done, I can show it somewhere. So they just happened to come in when I was like 3 or 4 paintings in on the series. And I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing now. And this is probably what I'm going to be doing for the next year. And they said, don't show it to anybody. And can you show it at CAM?
That's
So, of
amazing.
course.
Perfect timing too.
Yeah. Like even now, like I have this show, I'm on the last painting, but I'm already working on another body of work. Right. So once this goes up, I have something else. So if I get a studio visit from another, institution, and they say, "Hey, where are you going to show this body of work?" I'll say,
Let's discuss.
"What you guys like?" So
Yeah, and that kind of comments on, like, as artists always needing work in development, and you don't
mhm,
necessarily, you can't wait for an opportunity and then be like, okay, can you give me 9 months to create a body of work and then I'll present it for this solo exhibition opportunity that you're presenting. You really have to have either something developing the pipeline or that series about to be wrapped up on hand so that you can
mhm.
have it ready for those opportunities, and really being proactive about that.
Yeah.
Well, I say stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But in reality, I mean, with museums, you're gonna get a year or two before your exhibition anyway. But in the meantime, I mean, I don't have a technical job, right? So I still have to have work to sell, to show,
Mhm.
even in preparation for an exhibition. So I'm always constantly making work.
Mhm. That actually leads perfectly into question for you about how do you define success as an artist? So both the financial side and then also like you're talking about right now production wise and or maybe exposure wise. So just in general, like what makes you go, "Oh yeah, I'm making it. This is it. This is I'm successful." Like how would you define that for other artists that may be like still trying to cement in their minds what that could even look like?
Well, for me, success is I get to get up every day and paint, right? And I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay my mortgage because the paint pays for it. So to me, that's like a win-win, right? Anything beyond that is a bonus. So getting these exhibitions, getting paid to show my work is like great. Having collectors collect my work is great, and I guess that's part of the paying my mortgage part. But the fact that I can just do this and not have to worry about anything, right? Like I don't need fame and fortune. It's just my bills are paid. I can afford a studio outside of my house, and I get to paint all day, every day.
Yeah.
That
And
is so
that's success.
That's the ultimate dream, and I love that.
Yeah.
Now, looking back to when you were first getting started, what is one piece of advice that you wish you had heard earlier on in your creative journey?
Hmm. You're gonna get a lot of no's, I guess. That's the biggest. So like when you first start, you get a lot of no's, and those no's hurt because it's like, man, why is everybody telling me no? But it's just part of the process. I spoke to somebody, and like there's a residency I applied for. And I applied for it twice and I didn't get it. And they were like, "Well, how many did you apply for?" I said, "The same one." They said, "You have to apply for 40 to get two." And I was just
Yeah.
like, So you got 38 no's? And he said, I wish I only got 38 no's. And I was like, oh, well, if that person can get 38 no's, I can get 2 no's, right? So, I mean, you're going to get a lot of no's, but I mean, it just makes the yeses more special. So, yeah, don't be afraid to no, because you're going to get a lot. So, and no matter how great you are, I'm sure Picasso got a lot of no's before he became Picasso.
And that's perfect because that actually ties into something you said earlier about you sending the emails out, kind of cold emails, them not
hmm
responding for some artists, that is a no. But you're reinforcing too that this is a numbers game. Number of applications you have outstanding, residencies, emails you're sending out, contacts that you're trying to bridge and create a connection with. It's like if you only have 3 applications out there and all 3 of them are no, it's going to hurt. But if you have 50 of them out there, then it's not that big of a deal because numbers game wise, there might be 5 that say yes, and that's more than enough to keep you busy for the next 6 months, depending on what these projects and things are. So that's actually a great point and a great piece of advice to give to someone, especially someone starting out of like, you got to get through the no's, you got to put the volume, but that means you also have to put in the effort to reach out and put yourself out there. And like, even if it's an in-person event, all those people that pass by and just go like, meh, and like don't really care to interact with you or your work, because the more eyeballs, the more connections, the more opportunities you reach out to, the more likely is you'll get someone that stops and says, I need that now, or I want to exhibit that, or I'd love to invite you to this event or opportunity. So thank you for sharing that. That's a really
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah, it's not always a no. Sometimes it's just like, not right now. Or, I mean, sometimes, when you apply to a lot of stuff, you apply to stuff that you shouldn't be applying to anyway, right? Like,
Not a good fit yet.
I've applied to like an abstract art convention. Like, my work is not abstract, but
Just
so,
shoot your shot.
yeah. So, you just throw everything out there, and you'll end up where you're supposed to be. I'll say that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, like you were saying, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready, in terms
hmm
of if you have all these pieces, you have your artist statement, you have a solid body of work, you have these elements, it makes that application process easier too, to where you can just be like, okay, I'm going to shoot off 10 applications today. For some applications, it can be like a plug and play aspect to where then, yeah, you're like, we'll see if it's a connection, whether it's this exhibition, they might see my name for the application for an abstract exhibition, might say no, but they might have a figurative one next. And
hmm
they're like, that application will be a shoo-in because they've already seen you and loved you and been committed to your journey for 6 months. So you never really know where planting that seed will go.
Yeah. And then a fun
Exactly.
question as we start to wrap this up, so that you can go
Okay.
back to painting, of course. If you were handed $100, no strings attached. We're not promising we're giving $100, so disclaimer. If you were handed $100 right now, what would you splurge it on or invest in? It has to be something related to art and or your business, something that just brings you joy. So whether that's like brushes, a class, food, anything. Like what would you okay, food is not
Hmm.
related to art, but you get my gist. Yeah. What would you spend it on? Invest it on?
Uh, Probably a canvas or some paint. Probably
That's a
something
good one.
simple. Like I'm simple. I just buy. To be honest, I just buy art supplies and make art all day. Um,
Stuff to make more artwork, just
yeah,
constantly
stuff to make
making.
more. Yeah, so I'm gonna invest in myself, right? Like, just keep because I'm gonna turn that 100 into. I'm not gonna say how much, but that 100 is definitely gonna, go a long way.
The goal is to turn it into thousands, multiply
Yeah.
it.
Appreciate the $100, guys.
It may get lost in the mail, we'll see.
He's like, I know where your studios are. I can drive over. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Give me the 100. We're just kidding. We're just kidding. But this has been an amazing conversation. Clarence, thank you so, so much. Stay with us for a second, but thank you so, so much for joining us. It's been delightful to actually have you here on the podcast. So Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.
Of course, appreciate you guys.
Of course. So now where can people find you if they want to stay connected with you after listening to this interview?
You can find me at clarenceheyward.com or on Instagram at Clarence Heyward Art. And that's it. Like, I don't do Twitter or anything else.
All the other socials. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
and if people are in the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina for March of 2022 and want to go see Clarence's exhibition, we will definitely be going probably multiple times, and we're so excited to see the new work that you have developed.
Absolutely. And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share what you have learned, maybe you went and saw Clarence's exhibition, obviously go ahead and tag him when you do so that he can see that you went there too. You can also find Jackie and I on social media at Amate Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.